Welcome to the Story of the Week podcast. This is the supplemental podcast to the supplemental podcast that goes along with the weekday morning newscast that we produce called Things You Might Not Have Heard. It comes from the Conversation Project, all part of the More Better Media umbrella. All that said, my name is Jay Clifton Payne, and this podcast will go into a deep dive to one of the top 10 stories from the news this week based on your engagement with our headlines posted on Facebook and Twitter. It's pretty simple. This week was dominated by stories that included Matthew Perry, Marvel Studios, and the SAG-AFTRA Union, but after all was said and done, we are expanding the headlines on this one story. Headline reading like this: Teen randomly sucker punching strangers for TikTok says everybody makes mistakes. This was the number 2 ranked story for this week, posted on Thursday, the 2nd of November, and this for the week ending November the 4th, 2023. Now, before I get into this commentary, quick reminder that you can stop by our website. This is theconversationproject.com and get all the details on what we do for the Conversation Project, the what and the whys, if you will, that we do every single day with news and commentary for you, where you can find us, and kind of why we do this and how you make things happen. You literally put the words into my mouth for all things for the Conversation Project. You find out details of that at the website. So, as I said, the week ending the 4th of November, 2023, let's get into the story of this week. So this is going to be a bit of a journey. We're going to kick off with the story that actually made it to the story of the week, and that is the headline about the team sucker punching people in the park, and we'll get into that from the first part. This will transition to another story that we didn't actually post, but I heard a lot about as I listened to SiriusXM Radio, a story that was really big on Margaret Sherman-Connich's show this week about some deep fakes from some teenagers and how that was a thing. And then we'll go on to basically a story we've been covering for quite some time, the way people are handling the responses, or what people are handling the responses, to people's responses to what's going on in Israel and Hamas. It's not as complicated as it is, but it all follows along the lines of the boys will be boys sort of theme. And we will go deeper into why that theme may be the deadly part in the book of this commentary. But starting off with the main story, we posted this from themirror.com. That's where we got the full story. And we're going to do some reading real quick so we get into the context of it. 19-year-old TikTok user Alfred Lewis from Houston, Texas, came under police investigation after getting caught punching random people at a local park for a social media stunt. But now the teen is apologizing to the community for saying it was just a prank. Police began an investigation after a copy of a video was posted to a neighborhood app called Nextdoor. You've heard me complain about that one quite some bit. But here, the video originally seen on TikTok featured Alfred Lewis, a 19-year-old, as he ran around Walford Park in the Cypress area of Texas, viciously punching people and just knocking to the ground. The video shows Lewis wearing a red hoodie and sneakers coming up behind a figure clad in blue and jumping on their back. And then another similar altercation with another man, and finally a third assailant, and the teen tackled the man to his waist. The Harris County Sheriff's Officer investigated and then got to Lewis, who immediately came clean and apologized. Now, there is the bulk of the story. It goes deeper into detail, and, the parents were upset, and people are like, this boy need to be put in jail. But the main cusp of this week's commentary comes down to boys will be boys, or people will be people, or the young will be the young. And we'll go deeper into that as we go into the other stories. Starting with this one, though. This was originally a thought that it's all about attention. It's all about the attention economy, and it's all about clicks. And this kid wanted to be famous for the right now in TikTok, and because, as we've said many times, teenagers and young people's brains aren't fully developed, so they sometimes really can't make the right decision because their brains are really broken, found himself doing something to get attention. It garnered a lot of attention. A lot of big attention. A lot of people paid attention to a guy doing videos and just walking around punching people. It's like the bum fight sort of phenomenon that happened about a decade ago as social media was taking hold to us. And it was graphic, it was violent, it was, engaging, and it was just plain dumb. Really, really, really dumb. Why was he doing it? For TikTok. For Nextdoor, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But because, it got attention. And because kids like the high of getting attention without thinking about the actual lows of consequences, because they're kids, it's what we have. So the young man apologized. He apologized a lot. But in the comments of the articles that basically pick it up, have the two various themes that underlie today's message. One is boys will be boys. Guy did something really stupid. This was dumb, but It's a learning experience, and later on in life, he'll look back at it and laugh at it and have something to tell his kids what not to do. The other is this man assaulted people. This is a 19-year-old man. He out here punching folks in the face in the park. He need to go to jail. And there is no black and white. There is no in between. It's basically, oh, he learned a lesson. He'll grow out of it. Or this boy needs punishment right now. That's how we see these things. It's how we see these things as pure altercations. But it's also in the mix of boys will be boys, which is something that was in the past a really big deal that you allowed to happen. And now in today's days, with the war on men and the war on women and the war on everybody else, it seems like someone must be accountable for things. And since the patriarchy is getting all the blame, some of it is warranted, the men should be punished completely, especially since he's a young black teenager. If he was a white kid, there might be lesser of the people saying he needs to go to jail, maybe more people saying boys will be boys. But because he is a black kid, there were more along the lines of this boy needs to be punished, this boy needs to be taught a lesson. And that's another really deep underlying issue that we're not going into today. We're keeping that out of it. It's the basics of a young man does something stupid, really, really stupid for attention. He gets the attention, he gets caught, he apologizes. Is it something that you let pass? Not completely. He does get punished for it. He should get punished for it. But should he do jail time for this? Some people believe he is. Some people believe he does. Some people says these are pretty simple and straightforward assaults, and he needs something. Whether him going to prison for a week or doing a little bit of labor is going to actually help him learn something, or initially literally put him into that prison industrial complex, that system that does exist, and get him started there, is where people get a little fuzzy. Because they want him to learn his lesson, but they don't also want to push him a little farther than he needs to be to get started. So what do you do with a man like this? The article stops here, so we don't have any explanation of what happened going forward. We'll look for something in a few weeks to see if something comes up as a addendum to this. For most cases, once these stories get to this part where the salacious nature is done, they're done with it. And that's how it goes. And that's how well the commentary goes. It's also why we have 3 stories on a underlying theme, not just the one story. Because the TikTok being bad for everybody was where this was originally going. TikTok, social media, people looking for attention, looking for clicks, looking for love in all the wrong places online is a problem. As a person living in Generation X with kids in 2 generations, one being 29 now and one being 11 now, growing up in different time frames, although they are more or less the same sort of issues, same technology, different levels of growth into it, there are different levels. The 29-year-old is almost at the cusp of adulthood, and sooner or later we'll get to the get off my lawn type stuff going forward. The 11-year-old is just now getting to the part where she's getting to love to be mischievous and love to do the things and love to get the attention of folks on social media. She's a bigger threat to this than the other one because the other one's past that stage, more or less. The younger one has to deal with even more emotion to social media, more emotion to the likes and clicks natures, more emotions to what the influencers are saying, and more emotions to what we can't see when they're watching. Now, we fight that by watching as much stuff as we can that she watches, asking her really embarrassing questions about what she is watching so that she either get to be embarrassed to watch it, or we'll actually explain it to some manner that we like it. If we don't like it, she can't watch it, and just being extra monitoring of stuff. It is what it is. For the boy, it was a different thing. And there was some boys will be boy things in there, me being a man growing up, knowing that eventually you grow out of things. But there were some times you got to kind of snack them by the back of the neck and say, look, idiot, this is dumb. I do less of that with the 11-year-old girl, mostly because she's 11 and partly because she's a girl. But there will be times when their mother will get a chance to snatch her by the back of the neck and say, hey, this is dumb, don't do it. That's something that this generation got a lot from our older generations and probably figured it was a little too much the way we got it, so we did less for the younger generations, and now they're lacking for it. Spoiling the rod does not necessarily mean not beating them down with a stick, but spoiling the rod and spoiling the child should be about the proper discipline for a lot of things. Letting a lot of kids off the hook and letting them do things the easy way has been an issue that hopefully this generation will figure out and be able to fix, because TikTok's already spoiled them at this point. It's a matter of fixing the generations coming. Moving on to the second story, and what is the epitome of boys being boys in this case, is a story out of Westfield High School in New Jersey. A male student there use artificial intelligence apps, something that is readily available and probably in some cases for free for most people, to create pornographic images of girls inside of the school without their permission. Many girls were told. The images were allegedly created over the summer because they take a little time to create and make them perfect, but the students didn't find out about them until October. And an email to the administration at the school asking what was going on from various reporters basically came out saying that the school had an investigation going on. The pictures have been deleted, but they're never deleted off the internet. They're always someplace. And warned parents to talk to their children about the use of technology and what they were posting, saving, and sharing on social media. So this is going to be a bigger story coming forward. But what came down from this, and this is one that I picked up from listening to Marcus Merconish on the radio on Sirius XM this week, and he actually had a guest for his Saturday morning show, one of the students who was caught in the deepfakes, and her mother kind of talking about the issue, going deeper into telling how it was going on and what was happening. So we found out that it was a handful of girls who had their pictures manipulated and put out there, and it was a thing where all of a sudden you could tell the boys are acting weird because boys act weird because they were spreading the pictures around of the girls. Many girls called into the principal's office to kind of go over what was happening, and most of them leaving in distress. Here is another case of boys being boys. And what became the larger issue is the pornography issue for the kids. Now, this was a high school, so these are kids who are essentially at that age where they're man enough to be men, but obviously not man enough mentally to actually act like men. And they're dealing with things in this day and age on porn. Porn in 2023, as I record this, and just in general in the time of our internet times, is not the same porn that it was when I was in high school, not the same porn it was when my parents were in high school. Because as times got along, essentially it was something that you had to get in the mail from a store. Someone had to pass it to you. Someone had to acquire it from someplace. And while you may have known where it was, it still was hard to get it out of where it was and take it someplace. Now, all jokes aside from guys who found tapes of that their dads had stashed in someplace or magazines in the back of the closet, someone had to go out there and pull it, bring it in, take it someplace, and consume it. Thanks to the internet, every kid that has the same phone for TikTok has the same access to pornography. And every same kid has the same access to TikTok and cameras to do their pranks, has the same access to apps to do manipulations, to do deepfakes, to do dumb stuff like this. Now, this is a dumb act, a dumb prank, and something that boys will do. Now, does this kid get prosecuted for pornography charges or not? Will this kid have learned a lesson and will never do it again and be shamed by the rest of his classmates? Or will be hailed as a hero and use this to spark more things? Are there people demanding this kid get expelled? Or are there people asking him to just learn his lesson and use his powers for good rather than evil? Same thing applies. Boys will be boys. The lesson has been learned on all cases. Number one, this can be done so anyone out there who's paying attention to stories like this knows they can be susceptible to something like this. Girls should be very careful about what they put out there. And we've already had the talks about sharing things when people are asking for naughty pictures, that young girls should not be sharing them because it can be used against them. Now we know they can take their regular yearbook picture, put it on the face of a porn star, and use that against them. That's a bullet they cannot dodge from. That is something they can't back away from. They can't stop that if used improperly. The boys who do this, are they at fault where they should be held criminally? Should they be pushed aside in the society and be shunned from the world? Or should they just be kind of looked at with side eye until some other dumb thing happens and the kids will forget about it? Good example. Good case. This is one where we're not hearing a lot of people that are calling for expulsion, calling for jail time, mostly because it's assuming it's a white kid that does this. I don't know for a fact, but it's assuming that it's just some random white kid doing this, and that could be part of the issue. But there is an underlying issue of a kid, trying something, being successful at it, and it being something that's not the best thing in the world, and that you could be embarrassed by. And it's because of technology, it's because of what he could have done with it, what else he could have done with it to make it even worse. This is bad. It could have been a lot worse, And it probably, I'm going to say this because repeat offenders, he's probably still doing it. Probably happen again. He probably just will do a better job of not getting caught, to be honest. Or this will give the idea to other people to do the same thing, and we'll have copycats going forward. There were new people. And the reason why they killed this bunch of people in TikTok videos is because he saw someone in some other video punch somebody else, thought it was cool, figured he could do it. He did it, got in a little notoriety, and of course, cops came and checked him out. This kid probably got this idea from the fact that there's so many videos online about making deep fakes for your YouTube channel to make these types of videos to bring in viewers, make money. And so he just decided, I'm putting Sally's face on this porn star's body and seeing what happens and sharing it with my boys at school. Not a good thing. Sure, great use of technology in learning how to do something, not a great use of technology in what it actually turned into. The third story, not so much technology, but it really is a generational thing. A letter was penned, and it was signed off by many prestigious people from many prestigious law firms across the nation, stating to law schools that they don't want to hire anti-Semitic people. They won't want anti-Semitic pre-lawyers applying for jobs at their law firms. Why is this an issue? Because 3 weeks ago, Hamas, a terrorist organization that is based in Palestine, which also has some political backing as well, but the terrorist part of it, jumped across the border, attacked Israel, and started what we're calling a war, which is not technically a war because of technicalities, but a conflict of arms between two places. Gaza is not really a sovereign nation, but it is what it is. And Israel is a sovereign nation, which has in the charter from various other nations that they want to kill it. They want it to not exist. And so its existence is, for some reason, obscene to other nations. Hamas, a group who is one of these places, their charter says our goal is to eliminate Israel and the infidels and the Zionists and all that great stuff. So what's happening across college campuses in this time is something that actually should be happening. Dialogue. But the dialogue is getting extremely heated because as I am based in the United States, us, U.S., have had a long-standing thought process of we support Israel. We are backing Israel. We love the Israelites, the Jewish people in Israel. And there's sort of an idea that sits in the back of our heads that the Jewish communities here in the United States are more or less backing the folks back in Israel because cultural and all the stuff like that. The nation of Israel, the land of Israel, going back to biblical times, is a whole big old ball of wax you don't want to go into without really understanding what's happening. But the nation of Israel right now, as it stands, has its political, has its cultural, and has a lot of issues going forward, including internal issues where their government isn't exactly the best government in the world right now. They're not necessarily doing great things in Israel and being great, holy people. The current prime minister is up for corruption charges. This is his third round in there, and people don't necessarily like him. In fact, they are blaming him for part of it. That's the Israelis for allowing this to happen. That's the attack by Hamas. But what's happening in the dialogue in the United States and in the college campuses and just in workplaces in some cases is that there's a lot of youth, a lot of generational thought process of people who don't know, don't understand, haven't lived a long time to see things in the pro-Israel light and see what's happening for the Palestinians as they are being oppressed and they are not seeing the wealth of the nation that they have and wondering why Israel's being so gosh darn mean. Why are they putting these people down? They are responsible for all their aid, all their power, all the electricity, all their internet, God's sakes. So why are they being so mean to these people? So when they say that Palestine should be free from the river to the sea, they think the Palestinians live in this area and they should have the freedom to roam, freedom to do, freedom to be people and just be themselves. Beside the fact that the free from the river to the sea is a long-standing epithet, basically saying they're free of Jews from the river to the sea, is notwithstanding. That is just lost on them. They just think the Palestinians should have their land and should be, left to themselves. When that's probably a great idea if the Israelis didn't have the bulk of the land themselves and there wasn't any sort of issue with that. Now, the two-state solution, which has been on the table for basically as long as Israel's been around to keep the peace, that's something that the politicians can't work out. But for some reasons, the college kids can work out the fact that there are sides to take. And that side to take is not pro life, as in all terrorists should be put away. It is a life of an Israeli versus a life of a Palestinian. What we see here in the boys will be boys sort of thought process goes to the fact of how people mature in their processes from young generations to maturity to oldest to greater generation. A person in their young days are usually more liberal, more open, more out there to ideas because they've got no context to how things are going on. It is what it is. As we say, young people's brains aren't developed, so they're trying to turn it into something. A person who's older, more mature, more life going on, will start to be more conservative in their thought and actions because they've accumulated some stuff. They've learned some things. They've taken a side and want to have that side be the prevailing side as best as possible. So they're going to fight for the things they have and not so much open up for newer things, if you will. So if the more conservative level thought is that Israel deserves to be there and all these people are attacking them because they just are bad people, then the younger people are looking from the other side and they've just seen Israel fighting back and pushing a little too hard, if you will, and wondering why they're being so mean to this one group of people. The Palestinians should be free. Without that traditional love for Israel that the United States have been claiming, and you can sort of, take that with a grain of salt as well, it gets a little weird. Boys will be boys. Law firms don't want to deal with boys being boys or youth being youth, if you will. And the prevailing wisdom that is Israel is a place that should exist is sort of the prevailing wisdom in the old guard that are running these prestigious, very, very old, very, very established law firms. They don't have to deal with anyone who's going to be anti-Semitic. Now, we had a story that we talked about in the conversation 2 weeks ago about a promising law student who had a great job, great gig coming up after they finished their internships for the summer that was rescinded because this person was pulling more Palestinian than Israel. In fact, pulling Palestinian pretty hard and pretty harsh, if you will. The non-gender conforming pronouns notwithstanding, this person had a great shot of going someplace big and was yanked right there. And more law firms just don't want to deal with this. A conversation I saw on the news that was discussing this, ironically enough, watching Michael Sirconish on TV, when he was talking to a law professor, a dean at a law school, and saying that, is this really fair? He asked the dean, because his question today was, is this fair to take their political thought process in the hiring process? The dean took a minute back and said, it's fair to a point where you can do this. The point that he was worried about was Hamas versus Israel is not the right political thought process to actually do this. Now, people being anti-Semitic is a big deal, and anti-Semitism should not be allowed in the prominence of those prestigious places. Same thing for people who are just kind of down on Palestine because it is what it is. Same thing applies. The big thing he was worried about is taking it from a pure political thought and say, you're a Trump supporter, you're a Biden supporter, I won't hire you because of that. Meanwhile, the thought process that someone has on who to back in a situation like this can change and can change drastically based on situations. Some of them really, really bad. Some of them come straight from just knowing the facts and understanding what actual facts are, not alternative facts from a section that may be out there to basically be a rabble rouser, even though you may enjoy rabble rousing. Let's bring this all together. The first story. The young man who was out there doing something to get attention, punching people in the face on TikTok to get attention, apologized. Should he do jail time for this? No. Should he be punished severely? As severely that does not require any jail time, but the apology he made on his doorstep for his parents basically crying because he got caught needs to be a bit more harshly enforced. The young man who made the deepfake porn pictures and that were quite an issue of disturbance for many people. Should he do jail for this? Probably not. The reality is there are actual laws against these things, pornography and revenge porn, things like that, to put people away for a long time. Him being below the age of 18, I'm pretty sure, being in high school, will probably shield him from most of that, but still, probably not. However, should he be punished severely? The answer is yes. You don't really want to out him because he is still a minor, but you still want to have some limits to what he's doing and kind of keep an eye on what he's doing because he is a minor and he could get better or he could get worse. In theory, he could get better at it and worse in the actual execution. So these are things to go forward. But jail time, probably not. Now, we're not talking about jail time for the law students. We're talking about their chances of getting a job based off their political speech and what they're doing. This is beyond the red solo cups on Facebook pages. This is a real serious ideological thought process that could affect their futures in big ways. There are reasons to be different from your work life and home life, and there's reasons to keep them split. There's also a reason for people not wanting to hire people who are overtly evil, bad, or racist at a place when they are supposed to be pledging to be a melting pot of ideas, attitude, and diversity. If you know somebody's really, really bad at doing it and faking it, then you don't bring them in because they'll bring down the whole temperature of the whole place, or heat it up, if you will, based on which metaphor you want to go with. But should law firms not hire people based off their political thoughts on these ends? In this case, I believe it's a yes. But just like the professor said earlier, it's not whether you're a Democrat or Republican, pro-life, pro-choice, tax breaks for the rich or non-tax break for the rich. It's literal thought processes that make you fall into the line of a racist, of an anti-Semite, of a misogynist. Things that you say out loud that, if you really think about it, doesn't give you the right to jump the other side of the fence and be a real person who can actually see both sides of an issue. You have to be able to see both sides of the issue, even if you empathize with another. You may empathize with the Palestinians, but you can't believe that the Israelis should all die, or at least say words that to effect are those things, and vice versa. You can be pro-Israel, but not think that all the folks in Palestine should just be destroyed and pushed out of the way, because their situation is not fair, and Israel did do a lot to build up the situation. They didn't ask to be attacked. That is well beyond the scope of what's going on here, but they're not making the situation better by not trying to offer up good things. Same way, Hamas and Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, people who live there, are dealing with people who are bad at politics and can't make a decision to make things work. Those are all truths that are there. But the boys will be boys, sort of attitude that stitch those three stories together. Having the mindset that at some point in time, you will learn your error, your ways, and you'll get better, is how we basically manage our lives in general across the world. We assume that the bad actions of a young child will grow out, and as an adult, they'll know better and do better. Many times, if you live in a place where it's a good old boy network of stuff, you know that's not exactly the truth, but it is what it is. Boys will be boys. Children will be children. The young will be young, and they'll grow out of it and become upstanding members of the society that will believe what we believe, although they won't. The members of society right now dealing with TikTok will have to learn the lessons that they have to suffer through to make sure it's not as bad for their generation and their generations coming behind them, or their kids will have a lot of more hell to deal with. Deep fakes, same thing applies. The technology that seems like it's wonderful and it's doing great things for many people may put people out of jobs fairly soon who want to do acting because there's no more need for actors when computers can take over everything. And will we have enough lawyers to handle everything? We probably will always have too many lawyers, but will the lawyers we have be ones that we can really trust on the level of getting things done? Or a little personal political commentary in this one, will we graduate a bunch of kooks and elevate a bunch of crazies who are going to do dumb things like try to overturn elections that were fairly won again? We shall see. All we can do is sit back, definitely not relax, but watch as we are doing what we can to teach the younger generations and this generation here, which is actually maturing, figure out how they need to handle it to teach the generations coming beyond there. Because we can do what we can to prune and to garden and to weed the gardens we have right now for a better place. But we have to actually want to do that and not be too lazy and just let it go. Because if you let it go too long, the boys will be boys, and you never know what that will turn out to if you're not trying to actually mold them into upstanding men. And that is the story of the week for this week, the week ending November the 4th, 2023. Thank you so much for being a part of the show for today. Thank you so much for joining us in all the adventures that are from the Conversation Project, and for being a part of the family and the shows by engaging in our feeds. Go to our feeds on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/This is the Conversation Project, and twitter.com/th_conversation. It's x.com as well. And every 50 minutes or so, all day, all night, we post news stories for you to engage in. Engage in them, like them, love them, hate them, share them. The more you engage in them, the better chance we have of talking about them, either in our daily show called The Things You Might Have Heard, the weekend show, the weekly wrap-up, and if it's in the weekly wrap-up in the top 10 story, it could be here as a story of the week. Now, we did sort of cheat today and pulled one story that we actually didn't do much to cover, and two other stories that I just sort of heard about that I mashed into here to make a longer commentary. You can let me know how the commentary goes, how well we're doing or not well, by emailing me at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Stop by our website and click on our partnerships page as well to see if there's ways you can want to join up with us to make this thing better. In the meantime, stay limber, stay hydrated, stay on task for all the grand things you're here to do in this world, because everyone needs you to do what you can to make sure the boys may be boys, but at some point in time, they mature into men. It takes a village, you know. What story will we talk about as the story of the week next week? First, we have to get to the weekly wrap-up and see what are top 10 stories, and then we'll figure out which story out there outshines the rest, which headline kind of breaks itself from the pack, and what story will give you a bit more extra commentary to in the Story of the Week podcast. Thank you so much from the Conversation Project. I'm Jay Clifton Payne. We will talk to you again next week.